Hey darlings, how are you? Hope you've been coping okay. Today I wanted to do a video on fatphobia in anorexia recovery, or just kind of restrictive eating disorder recovery. I don't think everyone with anorexia is inherently fatphobic. I've just noticed a lot of people in anorexia recovery are actually very anti-fatphobia, and they do quite a lot of anti-fatphobia activism. It is a human rights issue. Of course there is a lot of fatphobia in the community, in like proana communities. Anorexia is a mental illness. It's not like a diet or a lifestyle. You don't have to look a certain way to have anorexia. You can be fat and have anorexia. Recovery or not, this affects us all. So for a formal diagnosis of anorexia, using the DSM-5 usually requires a fear of gaining weight despite being underweight, which I think is so outdated, to be honest. Their heart's in the right place, but a lot of ignorant people think that to have anorexia means to want to be skinny, and it literally couldn't be further from the truth. Anorexia is not all about wanting to be skinny. Fear of fatness, in my opinion, is a socially constructed symptom of diet culture. It's trained people to view aesthetic desirability over health. It's really unfortunate. Fatphobia has always and intimately been connected to other systems of oppression like sexism, racism and classism. Fatphobia still shows up in many forms and spaces in recovery, but it's not anyone's fault. We've learned that fatness is evil, immoral, bad, lazy, undesirable. We've just learned this, so a lot of it is very internalized, but it is our job to unlearn it and to question it, to shift our perception, not project what we've been told about fat bodies. We live in a culture where weight loss is always celebrated and weight gain is condemned. Even if you've lost weight from an eating disorder, people will probably still say like, congrats, you look amazing. Fatphobia even manifests in the doctor's office. Rampant misdiagnoses by doctors. Weight loss in fat people is always celebrated. It could have been from an eating disorder, or fatphobia shows up in only skinny people getting treatment for their eating disorder. Fat people are literally ignored in the doctor's office, and fatphobia has always been and continues to be central to the construction of whiteness. Fatphobia is definitely very tightly linked to racism. There's a book called Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fatphobia. Even the BMI is deeply anti-black. The BMI doesn't equate to health at all, because if you think about it, you could be a healthy BMI and be dying of cancer, anorexia.
The weird and racist history of the BMI. The BMI was invented in the 1830s by Adolphe Quetelet, who is a Belgian mathematician, statistician, and astronomer who was not a doctor and had no medical training whatsoever. It was first known as Quetelet's Index, and it was a mathematical thought experiment to determine the ideal man. The pool of participants used to create Quetelet's Index was exclusively white Westerners. There were no people of color and virtually no women. Quetelet's work was used to justify scientific racism for decades to come and was one of the founding principles in what is now called eugenics. The BMI was not used in the medical world until the early 20th century, when U.S. life insurance companies determined that they could use it to charge higher premiums to fat people. Many studies have established that the BMI is a poor predictor of health and is used to further discrimination against fat people.
Weight really does not determine health, and it's insane to me that the UK are going to start weighing primary school children, just questioning the history behind fatphobia. There's no respect for fat people, and that whole issue with you have to look a certain way to have anorexia is completely rooted in fatphobia. Eating disorders aren't weight disorders, they're behavioural mental illnesses. You could be any weight and die from an eating disorder. There's no need to try and control your body. Like, if every single person ate the same, we would still all have different body types. Fat does not mean ugly, and it's okay to take up space in this world.
Now, I am fat, plus size, whatever you want to call it. I like to use the word fat because I believe it should be a body neutral descriptor. Keyword should be. Whenever someone gets called skinny or whenever they get called fit, there's not a negative connotation behind those words because society doesn't deem those to be negative. There is a negative connotation behind whenever non-fat people call fat people fat. There's a reason why people who are not fat use the word fat to describe themselves, even when they're visibly not. The word fat is rarely ever used as a body neutral descriptor. People use it as a blanket term to describe the negative emotions they have about their bodies and the negative perceptions they have about other people's bodies.
Recovery is possible, and also unlearning fat phobia is possible. If you were born in the early 2000s or you grew up in the early 2000s, there is a lot to unlearn. Like, think about all the magazines that we saw when we were kids.
Is it just you and me, wreckage of the world? That must be so confusing for a little girl.
Before I show you guys these clips, I just need to make it very clear that these videos are extremely triggering, they're violent, and they're disgusting, so this is your warning.
Ideally, they have titties that protrude further than their big belly.
Right, well, you hope.
If not, they need to be shot in the head like cattle. Love for a guy in full samurai armor and a katana just to dissect them right over the navel. And then if they could stay alive long enough for you just to tit fuck them and mouth fuck them, and then they perish from this earth.
Jesus
That's all you need, because the bottom half of a fat girl, is there anything more worthless?
If you guys know me, you know that I'm rarely at a loss for words, but this really did it for me. This is so fucked up, and I'm asking you guys to please go and report their video.
Fat phobia really does affect everyone, and your internalized fat phobia affects others as well. I've been reading this book called The Fuck It Diet. It's the opposite of a diet book. It's a very anti-diet book, and it's been really helpful for me. But yeah, thank you for watching and dealing with me and my inconsistency. Thank you so much, and remember, fat people are fucking beautiful. They're not beautiful despite their fatness. Like, all bodies are good bodies because they keep us alive and they're trying to function for us. Thanks so much for watching, and have a good rest of the week.